Imagine this. You're deep in the zone at your desk, trying to focus, when suddenly, ping, you get an email demanding an immediate answer. A split second later, your phone is buzzing with a text about some crisis that apparently needs solving right this very second. You know that feeling, right? Your chest tightens, a spike of panic hits, and before you even had a second to actually process the information, your fingers are flying across the keyboard, just firing off a response. Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to decode exactly what is happening in that moment. We're dismantling the ultimate cognitive trap that catches, well, pretty much all of us at one point or another. The urgency illusion.
So let me ask you a brutally honest question right off the bat. Have you ever felt that intense, overwhelming rush to reply to a highly important message, only to realize, maybe an hour later, that your rushed decision actually created a much bigger mess than if you just waited? You know exactly what I mean, like hitting reply all with a frantic, half-baked answer just to prove you're on top of things. In that heat of the moment, you probably thought you were being super decisive, right? You felt productive, just crossing things off your mental checklist at lightning speed. But the terrifying truth is that when you're in that state, you aren't actually thinking strategically at all. You're just reacting blindly to an illusion of fake urgency.
Section 1. The Lazy Brain. How Urgency Sabotages Logic.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand why we fall for fake urgency, we have to look under the hood. Our modern brains are actually running on ancient biological hardware that is fundamentally pretty lazy. It wants to conserve energy, so it relies heavily on automated patterns and mental shortcuts. When you perceive a threat today, which is usually just a looming deadline or an angry email, a very specific biological process kicks off. The primitive, survival-focused parts of your brain literally hijack the sophisticated, strategic thinking parts. Your nervous system just gets flooded with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Psychologists actually call this an emotional hijacking. This biological stress response instantly wrecks your working memory and severely reduces your cognitive flexibility. You quite literally lose your ability to think clearly and basically turn into a biological autopilot machine.
This fast thinking relies entirely on raw emotion. It makes us snap to decisions based on literally whatever pops into our head first. Now, to be fair to human evolution, this physiological state is incredibly useful if you need to sprint away from a predator on the savannah. But if you are trying to navigate a complex modern decision at work or in your personal life, this impulsive fast thinking is absolutely going to sabotage you. You're running on pure impulse instead of logical analysis. And honestly, that's exactly where the mistakes happen.
Section 2. The Trap of Now. Immediate Consequences versus Long-Term Disaster.
So, why is this reactive, fast-thinking state so incredibly lethal to your long-term success? Well, because when we feel rushed, our natural human tendency is to put blinders on. We focus entirely on the present moment and we completely ignore the future. When urgency takes the wheel, you are heavily biased toward immediate consequences. You just desperately want to resolve that uncomfortable feeling of a stressful email, or maybe you jump headfirst into a totally unrealistic business opportunity out of sheer excitement. But the long-term implications of these impulsive choices are usually disastrous. It's like a tidal wave crashing down when you least expect it. Resolving that quick discomfort today often leads to recurring problems, wasted resources, and deeply eroded confidence from your team. You fix a tiny problem now, only to spawn a massive, way harder to fix problem for tomorrow.
Now here is a wild psychological reality check to keep in your back pocket. The enemy of good decisions under pressure isn't imperfection. It is perfectionism and artificial panic. Think about that for a second. Think about how many supposedly urgent decisions in your life aren't actually all that urgent when you take a magnifying glass to them. So much of the daily pressure we feel is completely self-imposed. We lack emotional control in the heat of the moment, so we panic, we hyper-focus on how hard the situation feels, and we completely fail to search for real, sustainable solutions.
But here is exactly where you take your power back. Strategic thinkers understand a fundamental secret. Declining to make a premature decision is, in itself, a form of decision-making. Just because someone else is panicking, running around with their hair on fire, does not mean you have to join them. You absolutely cannot let someone else's lack of planning become your own neurological emergency. You have the right, and frankly, the strategic obligation, to refuse the artificial timeline they are trying to push on you.
Section 3. The 10-10-10 Rule. Outsmarting the Urgency Illusion.
So how exactly do we override this primitive survival mechanism? We clearly can't just rely on our gut instinct because our gut is the exact thing screaming at us to panic. Instead, we have to implement a predetermined temporal framework to restore our analytical thinking. It's a three-step process that systematically dismantles panic and puts you firmly back in control. Step 1. Pause and audit. Step 2. Deploy the 10-10-10 override. And Step 3. Make the logical choice. Let's break down exactly how to execute each of these steps the next time that wave of artificial urgency hits you.
Step 1 is to pause and audit the urgency. Before you just blindly accept that the time pressure is real, you gotta hit the brakes. Ask yourself, is this deadline truly fixed, or can I buy a little more time for better analysis? Look, not every urgent request requires a lightning-fast response, no matter how many bold red exclamation points are in the email subject line. You have to let that artificial urgency subside so your mind can cool off and exit that state of emotional hijacking.
And that brings us to Step 2, deploying the 10-10-10 override. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it fundamentally shifts your perspective. For any significant decision under pressure, force yourself to step back and consider how you're going to feel about this choice across 3 distinct time frames: in 10 minutes, in 10 months, and in 10 years. In 10 minutes? Sure, you might feel the immediate relief of just getting it off your plate. But is this crisis even going to matter in 10 months? And will that quick, impulsive fix you want to slap on it right now severely damage your long-term goals or legacy in 10 years? Expanding your time horizon like this literally forces you to view a crisis completely outside of your current, panicked emotional bubble.
I like to think of this framework as the ultimate psychological cheat code, expanding your time horizon to see how today's challenges fit into the big picture instantly reduces your emotional reactivity. By intentionally stepping out of the present moment and looking toward the future, you literally starve your amygdala, that's the brain's fear center, of the panic it desperately needs to control you. You're just completely cutting off the fuel supply to your own biological stress response.
Which leads us directly to Step 3, making the logical choice. Because you've now looked at the situation through the lens of 10 months and 10 years, you've successfully shifted gears. You've moved away from fast, emotional thinking and engaged in careful, slow thinking. You've bought yourself the cognitive breathing room to examine the facts, consider the long-term ripple effects in advance, and make a decision based purely on solid logic rather than just sudden fear or fleeting excitement.
Let's pull all of this together. As long as you are letting artificial deadlines and stress hormones run your life, you're trapped playing the role of a reactive firefighter, just sprinting from blaze to blaze, totally ignoring what's actually starting the fires in the first place. But by hitting pause and deploying the 10-10-10 rule, you transform into a strategic visionary. And a visionary doesn't let the illusion of urgency dictate their actions. They dictate their own timeline. So, the next time your phone buzzes with one of those highly critical, need an answer now emergencies, you've got a choice to make. Are you going to let artificial urgency dictate your future, trigger your lazy brain, and push you into a disastrous shortcut? Or will you choose to hit pause, deploy the 10-10-10 rule, and reclaim your timeline? The decision and the control is entirely yours. Until next time, keep your analytical brain engaged, and whatever you do, don't let anyone rush your logic.